Senator Blunt is on the phone line with us. Sir, are you in Washington today? Maybe I'm talking to myself over here. Hello?
No, I'm here,
hey,
Tom.
There we go. Are you in Washington today?
I am.
I don't know if you're enjoying the same weather we are. I mean, sunny and like 88 today. Are you feeling the effects of May now there, or what's going on?
Well, usually the Washington weather is about a day behind the Columbia weather, and maybe Washington is more than a day behind Columbia in a lot of ways. But it's going to be about 70 here today, I think, and a little bit rainy, and 59 right now in Washington, D.C. I'm now the Washington call-in weather report guy.
Well, you did a good job there. You did very well. Hey, last week, Senator Blunt, I mentioned on the air a little bit about Benghazi and about the fact that it's difficult for the majority, my belief, it's difficult for the majority of Americans to wrap their head around this thing. And the time is going on, and more details slowly come out. And I have a feeling it's just very difficult. Now, I mentioned that last week. Getting into the weekend, I started feeling like there was more momentum behind let's get somewhere on Benghazi. On some of the news programs on Sunday morning, it was being brought up. And I wanted to lead off today. I know that we've talked about it in the past. What is the pulse in Washington on Benghazi? Are we going to finally get something moving on this, or is it just going to drag on forever?
We're finally going to have something moving with this House, the Select Committee. I think that's a good idea. If you'll recall, I was on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate when Benghazi happened. You and I talked about this at the time. I think it's clear that the government did not do the right thing, did not say what I think the administration misled the American people on this issue. And there are a lot of questions to be answered, like what happened in that almost 7 hours between the time the first two Americans were killed and the second two Americans were killed. I actually find it totally unreasonable and unacceptable that nobody could have gotten to Benghazi to save the lives of those last two Americans. And let's say they would have taken 2 more hours. Well, we didn't know they were going to be killed in 7 hours. They might have been killed in 9 hours. The administration's unwillingness to let people who were there talk. I was asking within 3 days of Benghazi to CIA, why is it that nobody has been able to talk to all the survivors who at that point were at Germany at the hospital, and they knew what happened. They knew whether there was a demonstration that got out of control or not. A day or two after that, the Intelligence Committee was shown the surveillance tapes of the compound there. Very clear from those tapes that the story that was being told was not the truth. I was saying at the time that the administration is being misleading, and I think now everybody knows that. But the one thing I would say, if you listen carefully to what everybody was saying over the weekend, particularly from the administration, they were trying to denigrate this by saying, well, just people who are trying to make politics out of this, or 2 years later, why would they be still talking about this? Why don't they talk about the big things that matter in the country? Our security of Americans overseas is a pretty big thing, and to those poor families that lost people in Benghazi, it was the biggest possible thing.
How do you, as a United States Senator, try to keep this in the forefront of what you're working on, keeping those that should be responsible accountable for their actions? And is there a way that you can keep your constituents aware of how important this is?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I do think that the Select Committee brings more attention to this. The Democrats are saying now that, well, no Democrats are going to participate. Again, trying to minimize this and make it some kind of partisan witch hunt instead of what it is. I mean, it's back to Secretary Clinton's virtually parting remarks as Secretary of State in response to Ron Johnson's question, where she says, why does it matter? Well, it matters a lot that we know what happened and ensure that it can't happen again. If something like this happened in the northern part of Africa today, could we get somebody there within 7 hours? Are we better prepared on the ground so that it wouldn't happen to start with? The only way to prevent things like this from happening again is to understand why they happened the first time. And it was outside the narrative of the administration. Their narrative was Osama bin Laden's dead, Al-Qaeda is gone, terrorism is over, and this attack was clearly in contradiction to the president's campaign theme.
All right, let's bring it closer to home on some things that people deal with on a daily basis, which is economy, jobs. Recently, you were applauding Kansas City area with job creation and expansion of the Clay Como Ford plant production, which is fantastic. We're talking about a lot of money coming into the area and a lot of jobs as well.
Well, we are. And, we're only about 4 or 5 common sense decisions away from an economy that would not only be a great economy for the United States, but would be a great economy for where we live. The transportation infrastructure of the country, including not just the railroad and the highway networks, but also the river network, the world food need opportunity for us to be part of meeting that doubling of world food consumption in the next 50 years. Very important for us. More American energy. We're having this week, we're trying to do everything we can to force Senator Reid to let us have a real debate on energy instead of just bring the tiny energy bill that he wants to talk about, which we're willing to talk about too. But let's talk about the Keystone Pipeline. Let's talk about what happens when you put a tax on fossil fuels that raises the utility bills of everybody, including the most struggling family in our state who's having a hard time paying their current bill. We're not that far from a country that is dramatically going to be doing what's happening in Clay Como, which is a country that's making things again. Good utility rates, good transportation system, the ability to run the high-tech additions that are now part of every manufacturing facility that's being built, but you have to have people to run that as well, and we should want those good jobs with good take-home pay.
One more question, Senator, and then we'll let you run. I know that you've got a lot to get to. On the Keystone Pipeline, how important is it? I know it's part of, as you were talking just now, this grander picture, which is extremely important, all the different pieces. How big of a deal is Keystone, in your mind, to our economy and our future energy in the United States?
I said on the Senate floor one day last week that the Keystone Pipeline is really just sort of the tip of the big underground opportunity. If you just see the tip of this, the Keystone Pipeline matters. If we didn't do the Keystone Pipeline and we did everything else we need to do to make the most of more American energy, it wouldn't be the worst decision in the world. It would be a bad decision. But the Keystone Pipeline, there's a lot of shovel-ready jobs. It and other pipelines get oil and natural gas back in pipelines instead of on railroad cars. And there's nothing wrong with having some of this on railroad cars, but when you're totally dependent on the railroads, that makes it harder to get grain hauled. It makes it harder to get access to cars. It does create a more expensive transportation system for energy than you'd have otherwise. The right combination of rail and pipelines, but the biggest combination is Canada, Mexico, and the United States of America as an energy independent network of oil and gas and coal. Unbelievable opportunities for us economically if we do that, not to mention the great national security potential that you have when we no longer are dependent on buying things from people who don't like us and buying things from a region that can be easily disrupted in the Middle East.
You and I are in agreement on that. When United States Senator Roy Blunt, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'll get in touch with you again soon to find out that forecast for Washington as well.
Yeah, look forward to talking to you soon, Tom. Look forward to being in the studio one of these days soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. And by the way, hats off to Roy Blunt with the work and his support of the Caring for America's Heroes Act.